this is something new on LinkedIn that they've just given us in the past like year and a half, which is, it used to be that when we would boost a company post. But you know how much people pay attention to your company posts? It's not much. Like, company comes across your feed that you've never heard of. Most of the time you just keep scrolling. But they gave us thought leader ads, which is what they call it when you boost a personal post. And so, Lee, you put a video out of you and a talking head. We can then sponsor that same post to the audiences that you want to be able to see it. They fit your exact target audience. And those are the highest performing ads on LinkedIn right now.
Influential and thought-provoking minds in marketing, sales, and business. The Business of Marketing Podcast.
Welcome again to the Business of Marketing. I'm A. Lee Judge. You know, I'm an organic marketing type of guy, and after all, my agency is based on creating content for inbound organic content marketing. But even we run ads, mainly on Google, but sometimes even on LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn can be a bit more of a difficult thing to understand, so I lean on the experts. And you don't see as many paid social experts on LinkedIn as you do on other channels. So I'm bringing you one today. Here is my go-to guy for learning about advertising on LinkedIn. Welcome to the show, AJ Wilcox.
Lee, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man. You know, we are on the speaking circuit. I get a chance to see you every now and then. And you know, we're always typically on our path for that day to get to our speaking engagement. So we don't get a chance to talk a lot. So I want to dig in today because I have genuine questions about LinkedIn ads. I know our listeners do too. So let's get into it. All right.
Killer. Let's do it.
So even on your profile on LinkedIn, you say that LinkedIn ads are difficult to scale efficiently. So you put that right on the table right out the start. So tell me why and how in the world did you end up specializing specifically on LinkedIn advertising?
I started out my career, this has been, back in 2007. I started out my career as an SEO guy.
Oh, okay.
And I got really tired of the recommendations that I would put into place, not being able to actually see the results of those for, 4 to 6 months. And then I went, ooh, Google ads is amazing. It's the same keywords, but I get data same day and I get to know what's working. So that's cool. With that skill set, I went into the last company I worked for, and it was a pre-IPO SaaS company. And on my very first day, I was explaining like the strategies that I wanted to implement. And my new boss, the CMO, said, yep, go ahead, implement it. That all sounds good. But just so you know, we started a pilot with LinkedIn ads 2 weeks ago. Take it over, see what you can do with it. And I didn't want to look stupid to my new boss. So I saluted and said, yes, ma'am, jumped in and started. I structured things the same way that I structured Google ads back in the day, just these tight ad groups, tight audiences kind of approach. And within about 2 weeks, a sales guy came up and said, hey, AJ, we are fighting over your leads. Whatever you're doing, keep it up.
Wow.
And I went and jumped into it to Salesforce, was our CRM at the time, and looked at the leads he was talking about, and every single one that he mentioned was sourced from LinkedIn ads. And I went, what am I doing wasting my time on these other platforms? And so I jumped in and long story short, ended up scaling that over the next 2.5 years to become LinkedIn's largest spending ad account. Had really good relationships with the product team. They cared about what I had to say. And that was the beginning of my love for LinkedIn ads.
See, that's why there's so few of you out there, because you have the relationships, you have the experience, you got a few inside tracks, it sounds like. Plus you have the experience before that of doing all the other places with Google and everything else. So give us an idea of, your insider's track. What are some of the biggest differences about advertising on LinkedIn versus other social channels and even Google ads?
Well, I think it's really easy to differentiate between Google ads and LinkedIn first off, because when someone is searching for something on Google, they have intent. They're telling you exactly what it is that they're searching for. And you take the keyword and say, I want my ad to show up when someone types this, and it's great. The net result, though, is that your sales team is going to get these leads of people who are what I would call hot and ready, but you have no control over who they are professionally. So if you sell something that's enterprise level, you get a lot of like mom and pops and little leads coming through who don't realize that, the difference between enterprise and SMB, just because, the keyword doesn't communicate that.
Mm-hmm.
So on LinkedIn side, we get exactly the opposite. We can't target people necessarily by what it is that they're searching for right now, so we lose the intent. But what we do get is we make sure that our ads are being hyper targeted to the exact right people who can afford, who would be a perfect candidate for our product or service. So when the sales team gets these leads, generally the sales cycle is a little bit longer, but they're a much larger lead. They fit your ideal customer profile. They're the ones that you're going to be so proud to put their logo on your website as a customer.
Mm-hmm. So I've done LinkedIn ads, both when I was working in corporate, buying them for that company, also for myself. And I appreciate the things you just said about being able to really target who they're going to and knowing who they are when they interact. But that comes at a cost. And
Totally.
even before we get on that part, which is probably the biggest, I think, Achilles heel of LinkedIn ads is the cost. Let's first talk about the targeting part, which is the good part about it. Now, I noticed that just like every other ad platform, they want to push you to spend more and more. Like when I say, I just want, CMOs who have, who are in this region, who do this thing or whatever. Of course, the next thing they're going to tell me is, oh, that audience is too small. Go bigger. Or, it may say you only have, 10,000 people in what you just selected, and you're only going to get so many clicks. Go bigger. So they push you to go bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's talk to the people who have already kind of put their foot in the water and they're going through that process. This is going deeper than I meant to go so fast, but let's just dive into it. You're in that process. They're pushing you to spend more. You're trying to narrow down who you're speaking to and utilize the best part of LinkedIn, which is being able to do that. What's your advice on going down that path and not losing your shirt while you're trying to specialize?
Yeah, there are, first of all, LinkedIn wants you to spend more because they like to see more in their pockets for sure. But there is also an element here that makes a lot of sense. It's if someone comes on and only spends $300 or $400, doesn't see a lead come in that their sales team wants to meet with. I've seen it over and over where they go, oh, LinkedIn ads doesn't work, and they leave. And, generally I would say because on LinkedIn, we are targeting what tend to be a little bit longer of these sales cycles and larger budgets. These do take time, and you do need enough of them coming through to be able to actually judge and say, yep, this looks like it's working, or no, it doesn't. And so you really do want to spend a decent budget. What I recommend for most is to start with about $5,000 a month, which may seem high or may seem low to some of you. But what I've found is usually if you're spending about $5,000 a month, by the end of the month, you can say pretty much with certainty, like, oh, this looks like it's heading in the right direction, or no, this sucks. We should cut bait and run. But yeah, I would start out like, make sure you get enough data to actually tell what's working.
That's a good point. Because I know even on the early days when I was running, I have more experience myself in Google ads, which is, as you explained earlier, is very different. But what I found similar was there was a minimum spend before you could actually do the thing, before you had enough data, before it understood and learned what you were after. And you didn't see very many results. At that time, I forgot, I think it may have been for that particular company I was with, we had to spend at least $1,000 a month to even start in the conversation of getting leads. And this was Google probably in 2018 or so. And I realized the number said when I dropped below that, the leads stopped coming. Above that, then I was in the game. And so you mentioned with LinkedIn, there's something like that too. I'm sure it varies. I'll give you that caveat. But you said you threw out like 5,000. Like, are we talking about to really play ball in LinkedIn, you're spending that kind of money?
I think so. And if you're at smaller spend, it's okay. It just means that you've got to run for longer before you get those insights. So it's kind of like what is your requirement for your speed to insights? If you've got all the time in the world and you want to run this over 3 months to spend that much money, that's totally fine too. But to your point of what you said before, when you have an audience that is super small, LinkedIn starts to complain if you have an audience less than 50,000 people. But I would say, try to go over about 20,000, because if you go much under that, you get into a position where you've really got to bid high to get any sort of traffic to come through. And if you're spending $18, $20 a click, especially on a small budget, you may realize very quickly, like, oh, this platform is too expensive for me. Whereas if you had an audience that was bigger, let's say between 20,000 and 100,000, you can get your costs all the way down to like $5, $6, $8 a click, which is much more where I like to play.
So what if you know that the number of potential people in your audience is smaller than the number they're suggesting you use? Like, for example, if you say, I only want to talk to, industrial engineers in the flooring and tile industry, you could find them by their profile, but they may not be 50,000 of those in your market. So what do you do when you're trying to play with those numbers and you end up in that kind of predicament?
Yeah, I would say ignore LinkedIn's advice. If you get down to your only audience and it does not make sense to expand past there, totally fine. I'd say move forward, but just realize that LinkedIn's recommendations for bids for budgets aren't going to make sense for you. And I would suggest start out by paying by the click, because LinkedIn's default is maximum delivery bidding is what it's called. It's the most expensive way to pay. And so switch yours to cost per click bid, and maybe start out at something like $10 a click and just see how it does. If it spends your budget too fast, not fast enough, and you can adjust from there. And if it's a small audience, it might just take, you might not see clicks coming in every day. It might not be filling a whole budget, but of course, that every chance you get, you're getting in front of one of your ideal target audience. I think that's okay to let it run over long term.
So what are your indicators? I mean, you're spending money. You may or may not see those leads coming in. What are your indicators that tell you, maybe I'm not spending enough, or maybe I have my targeting set up wrong, or maybe it's working really well, but it's just early? What are some of those benchmarks you would set to understand how you're doing?
What I have found over the 1,000+ clients we've worked with is the vast majority of the time, the client wants sales-ready leads, and they want them fast. Like, that's why they're investing in LinkedIn. And if we comply, we take their demo-focused ads, like get a demo, talk to someone, do a free consultation or whatever. If we run that to their cold audiences, the cold audiences are saying, we don't know who you are. Like, no, I'm not ready to talk to someone. I'm still in the learning phase. And it's about 5% of the time we have a client who their product or service is so disruptive, there's this latent demand built up in the marketplace where that works, but most of the time it doesn't. So what I like to plan is my first touch with an audience is very much like a light, educational, helpful, friendly kind of touch. Videos from the founder or an internal thought leader work really well here, where you can say, like, here's a quick tip, a trick, a strategy, an industry update that you need to know about. And that's a great first touch. Then, so let's say you're only driving those for the first month of advertising. What you're looking for is a level of engagement. You want to see, do people care about these posts? Are they watching them past 50% of the video or 75%? Are they liking, commenting? Are they clicking on whatever link? So that's what I look for first. But then once I have enough of those to build a retargeting audience, now I create a second stage to my funnel, and I go, okay, if I know that you've already watched 50% of one of my thought leader videos, now I'm going to target you with something else helpful. Come and read this free blog post, download this free guide, something like that. And then once enough of those people have done that, then I create a 3-stage funnel. And it's only in the 3rd stage where I start asking for information. Like, you've had at least 2 meaningful interactions with our brand. It's time to talk to someone, get a demo, get that free consultation. And of course, that funnel, it takes a while for people to work through, see your ads, interact with them in a way that they graduate down. But if you're in it for the long haul, that is by far the most efficient way to start generating sales-ready leads, because everything that comes out of that bottom of the funnel, they're sales-ready. They're ready to talk to someone, and they're a lot less likely to ghost you when they set up a call with a sales rep.
I want to dig deeper on a couple of things you said there. I heard you mentioned analytics and you mentioned targeting. So analytics-wise, for those who haven't worked with or tried to use LinkedIn ads yet, what are some of the analytics we get on the back end? You mentioned like watch time, for example. What other things can we see on the back end while we're doing advertising?
LinkedIn has some great metrics. They'll tell you how many people clicked on them or engaged in any way, likes, comments, reshares. They'll share watch time with video, or if it's a document, they'll say what percentage of the document people made it through. They have their own lead generation forms that are baked right into an ad. So if someone fills those out, they'll tell you how many people opened the form versus how many people actually filled it out and completed it. There's conversion tracking. I mean, all kinds of great stuff. I can go on and on. Feel free to ask any question you want about it.
Well, let me ask you this. If I'm not mistaken, short of filling a form out, LinkedIn won't tell you who interacted, right?
Yes. And I get this request a lot. Like, oh, can I see who it is who's clicking on my ads? But there are a couple workarounds. For those who hit like or hit comment, if you go to the actual ad, you can see the identities of the people who've liked and commented. So right there, you look at their profiles and gather a little bit of faith, like, oh yeah, of course, these are the profiles that I want to be reaching. It looks like I'm hitting the right people. There's also personal identity resolution kinds of services. The one that comes to mind right now is rb2b.com. And they've got a free one where they'll resolve 150 identities on your website or a landing page for free. So anyone should go sign up for that. But that way, if you're sending traffic to your website, you can be like, oh, show me the identities of the people who are clicking who may not have filled out a form yet. And again, just giving me faith that what I'm doing, like I am hitting the right people.
You know, I want to share a little bit of maybe a hack with the listeners that I do on the other side that is not advertising. It's taking advantage of other people advertising. You mentioned that when someone likes or clicks on an ad, I would go to my competitors and see who's liking their ads, because then you know who's tuned in and who they targeted. And so I've gone to competitors' ads and go, okay, these people liked this ad or they've been targeted. So that means that my competitor has figured out to target them. I'll go through everybody who likes that ad and reach out to them. So I'm benefiting from that person's ad.
Oh, and that's so cool. And throwing this out there, I can't condone scraping on the platform because it's dangerous. It's against
I don't do it
LinkedIn's terms of
automated,
service.
but if I'm there,
yeah, Well, let me just throw this out there. If you can see who it is who's commenting, if you can add them to a list, we can upload lists into LinkedIn ads. So we can upload a contact list of individuals. So let's say you somehow, whether it's manually or somehow else, you procure a list of all of the people who are commenting on your competitors' ads. You could upload, let's say you get 1,000 people, upload them into LinkedIn. You're showing ads to people as like trying to steal away from your competitor. That could be an interesting play as well. We can also upload lists of companies. So if you have a hit list, a target list of companies that you would love to work with, maybe you know that these are companies who work with your competitor already, or maybe they fit your ideal customer profile. You can upload those into LinkedIn, add on other criteria, like they have to have this job title or whatever, and you can show ads to them. They're one of my favorite applications for LinkedIn ads.
Well, so how does LinkedIn protect us from spammers, from people who get literally scraped lists from databases and upload them? I mean, I think I've seen some reactions and some blocks before from LinkedIn saying, hey, where'd this list come from? But share with us some of the things that you know or some things you've seen people try to do nefariously that LinkedIn has some safety measures in there for.
LinkedIn does say, like, you have to agree when you upload a list, like, I own this list, like I have a reason to have these. But ultimately, when someone is targeted by an ad on any network, they don't know why it is that they're being targeted for that. They just know that this ad shows up in their feed as opposed to someone else's. So I've never had anyone complain about like, wait, why am I seeing this ad? Like, what's the difference between targeting someone on a list versus telling LinkedIn, show ads to all people in this type of company with this role? Like, they can't tell whether they're being targeted by a list or whether you're just kind of spraying and praying with LinkedIn's more general targeting. That's
a good point. Speaking of that, about targeting, I'm sure everybody who's on LinkedIn has seen an ad and wondered, why was this targeted to me? It's almost like Google has a little click. You say, why was this ad shown to me? That doesn't go into specifically, because you're an engineer in Nebraska, but that's what it's trying to hint that it knows. Here's the thing though. I've seen some ads, well, two cases. One, I've gone to maybe a potential client's website because they're a potential client. And then all of a sudden I get their ads. I'm like, okay, they're retargeting me. I got their cookie. That's what's happening, right? And I also think they're wasting ad spend on money they could be spending with us. Because I'm like, why are you, I'm not an industrial engineer. I'm your marketing agency that you're looking to hire, but yet I'm getting all your ads. And,
Yes.
you know, I almost want to tell them, hey, maybe I should send them to AJ Wilcox and say, hey, you know what? You know, you're an insurance company, you're a medical insurance company, and you're targeting us with your ads. You need to talk to my friend AJ here, because the fact that I'm getting this is not good for your ad spend, right? There's something wrong, right?
Yeah, totally. With any sort of retargeting campaign of, hey, I want to show ads to the people who've landed on my website, what I do is I put guardrails on them. And that would be like, okay, if I know that I'm targeting people in the medical field, I'm going to take that retargeting list, and then before I show them ads, I'm going to add on, like, by the way, you need to be in the medical field. By the way, you have to have be at a company with more than 200 employees. By the way, you have to have a seniority of, you know, manager or above. And that way, if someone comes to your site because they're looking for a job, or they're trying to sell you something, or, you know, they're scouting you for being a vendor, whatever it is, you get cut out of that audience and they're not wasting money on you.
That's so important, because I've seen it so many times, especially, you know, when you have a potential client, you go to their website, or you're looking at somebody's profile and you go to their website because you're interested in that person, perhaps, and you want to see where they work. But then you get targeted, and there's such a waste going on. And I think that's probably one of the things that kind of adds into the bad rep of the cost of LinkedIn ads, because they don't know people like you to get the information to understand how to do it correctly. One last thing on that point too. Often I see ads on LinkedIn that are like, they're just consistently bombarding me with that particular ad. It's like every 3 or 4 scrolls, I see the same ad over and over again, to where I'm tired of seeing it. And I may think to myself, well, first of all, it doesn't pertain to me. Like, they targeted me very poorly. And 2, I have no way of letting them know. Now, as a marketer, I want to say, look, please stop sending me these advertisements for jet planes. I'm not going to buy one. So please stop advertising to me. Is there a way for either the consumer watching or the advertiser to see how they're, you know, where this leakage is when they're wasting their ads?
You can comment on the post. So as an ad comes, you can comment and say, like, hey, whoever's running these ads, you might want to check your targeting, because I do not fit this criteria. You can also report the ad. So I think it's in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah, and I've tried that, but I didn't want to, you know, report sounds so bad. Like, I don't want to say it's a bad or obscene ad or something. It's just that I want you to stop showing it to me. In fact, there is one ad that I get, I just really don't want to see. It's a really bad ad, and I'm a video person. It's a horrible video, so it irks me even more. And so I'm like, how do I stop this ad? There's really no way that I could do it other than reporting it, which I don't want to give them any negative points for that.
Yeah, good point. I would probably comment. Occasionally I will go and search on LinkedIn, like, show me the marketing people at this company, and I'll send a message to them and just say, just so you know, here's a screenshot of the ad I keep getting. I do not fit your criteria. You may want to adjust your targeting. But on the other hand, when I do that, there's like by the way, you can hire me to fix it.
Yeah,
so,
you should. So let me ask you this. Again, I mentioned earlier, so my company, Content Monster, we create organic content that ends up on LinkedIn. Some of our clients, we even posted on LinkedIn for them after we create it, whether it be video or images or whatever. So let's talk about formatting. 2 points I want to hear from you about. One, are there particular formats that we can say as a trend perform better than others? And also I want to understand the starting point. Do we start with creating an ad that is an ad, or do we start with organic and boost it as an ad? So let's start with the format part.
Okay. So format wise, you know, if you would have asked me 3 years ago, I would have said, oh, don't waste your time with video ads. They don't work on LinkedIn. You know, no one cares. I have changed my tune. And I don't know whether it's user behavior on the platform has changed, or maybe people just have started creating much better video content. But for whatever reason it is, video works extremely well, especially if it's talking head, where you're giving a tip, a trick, a strategy. Those kinds of like free educational hits are some of the highest performing ads that we have on LinkedIn. Document ads are still pretty new, and they do quite well. And what I love about both video and document ads we can create retargeting audiences that say, if you've watched at least 25% of one of my video ads, or 50, I like 50%, or if you've scrolled to 50% of one of my document ads, I'm going to put you in a new audience and target you a little bit more deeply into my funnel. And so I love those as a first touch for someone's top of funnel. I call it my stage one. So those are, and then of course there's a single image ad that, LinkedIn came out with those in 2013. They still are great. In front of word processor and Canva, 5 minutes later, you've got something that you can put out there as an ad. So I like to see those, but yeah, those are my biggest trends.
Well, you mentioned video first, so I can't help but pause and say, if any of our clients or potential clients of Content Monster are watching, we specialize in talking head video. And it doesn't have to just stop at the organic content we create for you. We can then take that and turn it into ads, because talking head videos work, especially in a time when AI is so prevalent. People are doing fake videos, both fake images and fake video. A real executive or thought leader or a subject matter expert talking about your company, just giving a tip or informing somebody, becoming that trusted advisor, is so powerful, from organic and even on to paid. So let's talk about the next step. You have an ad that could live as organic, or it could be boosted. What are your thoughts on either letting something live as organic until it proves itself, or do you suggest starting with the ad in mind?
I suggest a little bit of both. So here's how I think about that. If you put something out organically and you can see that it has more views, it has more engagement than other posts, not only have you decided it looks like this is a high performer organically, so it's probably going to work well as an ad, then you're like a 70s rock band where you come to concert, you're not showing your new stuff, you're playing the greatest hits. That's kind of what that content is. What else is cool about that is all of the likes and comments that post has built up organically. When you turn it into an ad, it keeps all those things if you boost it. And so now you have all this implicit social proof that shows that you're a great brand, that this ad is worth paying attention to. So I do love that. The problem with boosting posts is you can't really A/B test, because to do a proper A/B test, you would have to post almost exactly the same post right back to back with some minor change. Whereas when we run things as ads, if we create them as ads, we can do a pretty clean A/B test. I'm just going to create 2 posts where only the headline or only the intro text is different here, and that's really good for your testing.
Okay.
The other thing that's really awesome about boosting, this is something new on LinkedIn that they've just given us in the past year and a half, which is, it used to be that when we would boost a company post. But you know how much people pay attention to your company posts. It's not much. Company comes across your feed that you've never heard of. Most of the time you just keep scrolling. But they gave us thought leader ads, which is what they call it when you boost a personal post. And so Lee, you put a video out of you in a talking head. We can then sponsor that same post to the audiences that you want to be able to see it. They fit your exact target audience. And those are the highest performing ads on LinkedIn right now. They do great. And I highly recommend using them, especially with talking head video.
That's music to my ears, AJ, because right now, this is our highest performing service in Content Monster, is producing talking head videos of experts, and knowing that we have your stamp of approval on that works for ads on LinkedIn. That's awesome to hear.
Oh yeah. So let me ask you this. When you're creating these talking head videos, what's the length that you shoot for? What do you see being the most engaging organically? I'm curious if that lines up with what I see from an advertising perspective.
So in most cases, our strategy of recording these is we start with what we call the big content. So it could be a full conversation like we're doing right now. It could be a podcast, could be an interview, but we also help our clients format it into sound bites so that they can get some quick, short answers so that we can output what could be potentially an ad. So, of course, the goal is an ad. The goal is a short social piece that conveys value in a short amount of time, which then equates to a good ad. So
Totally.
And those typically, we're still averaging the sweet spot around 60 seconds. But it also plays into our larger picture of we try to make assets that work the best they can across platforms. So, between Instagram, TikTok, YouTube going up to 3 minutes now, TikTok going way beyond that, we take all that into consideration, but we also take in consideration people's attention spans, if it's for business or not, and if we want to go further later on into advertising, we're not going to do a 3-minute clip and think we're going to turn it into an ad. So the sweet spot is still around 60 seconds.
Perfect. What I find is to cold audiences, I like to keep them between about 20 to 40 seconds to grab their attention. And then as a second touch, we can usually go 30 seconds to 60 seconds because we've earned a little bit more of their attention. They're more likely to stick around. And so, your type of content fits in perfectly with my strategy.
That's smart because, our rule of 60-second is to our editors, if the client wants a 60-second bite, we always tell them, but if you get the point across in 20, we're going to make it 20, right? So if it's a good one, we're not going to just keep on going just for the sake of trying to fill up time. If your thought comes across in 20 seconds, 30 seconds, that's how long the shorts should be. And according to what you're saying, that makes it even better if you want to extend it to advertising.
Oh, yeah. I think it's perfect.
All right. Well, to wrap up, AJ, I'll tell our audience that LinkedIn advertising, I think, is a great place to be. It's a great thing to do. It does have its cost, and you have to know what you're doing, I think, probably more than any other type of online advertising. So I want to encourage them to reach out to you. So how can they reach out to you, AJ? Tell us about your company, what you do, how you help, and how they can work with you.
Sure. So if you go to b2linked.com, the letter B, the number 2, and the word linked.com, there you can see our pricing, like what we do. Basically, we're an ad agency that LinkedIn ads is our sole focus. So that one's great. I also run the LinkedIn Ads Show podcast. So obviously, if you're listening to this podcast now, you're into podcasts, go check out the LinkedIn Ads Show in whatever podcast player you have running. And reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find, AJ Wilcox. And I'm usually posting valuable free stuff 2 or 3 times a week. And I would absolutely love to be able to connect with you there.
Always. And also, if you're going to a marketing conference and AJ is there, be sure to check out his sessions. You'll learn a ton.
Oh, and same thing with Lee's sessions. Man, I have sat in now on probably 3 or 4 of your sessions in the last year, and they are killer. So way to go.
Same
I'm going to
here.
be in your audience as well.
I hate when they have us back to back.
I know. That happened.
It's always your favorite speakers that are all at the same time as you are. So that's probably a good sign to how we are. They know who's good, right? So.
Absolutely.
So again, AJ, thanks for joining us. To the listeners, if you're listening to the podcast and want to also see AJ and I, video of this podcast and others are available in the podcast section of contentmonster.com. Again, thanks, AJ. And to the listeners, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Marketing podcast, a show brought to you by ContentMonster.com, the producer of B2B digital marketing content. Show notes can be found on ContentMonster.com, as well as aleejudge.com. To continue the conversation, be sure to follow the podcast on your favorite podcast platform.